One of my favorite Dramione fan fictions is becoming a book. Damaged Goods by Slytherin After Dark will be removed from AO3 because it's being published. So excited for the author. I wish her the best of luck. What I find interesting about this, though, is there's a huge shift when it comes to Dramione, like spaces as a reader. And I think that's so interesting because when it comes to how people are interacting with Germany, it's become less of a community of people seeing what they like. Even if you're not maybe community oriented, it feels like there's a huge demand in a lot of spaces. For instance, if you go onto Reddit and you're looking at a Germany Reddit forum, it's mostly going to be like people saying, "Oh my gosh, help me find a fan fiction that's like this or that." And then there'll be, of course, some people who help them find it. But there's not a lot of posts of people just saying, "Oh, here's the fan fiction that I liked." It's mostly people just demanding that people help them find a fan fiction. And then there's a lot I've noticed of, especially on Reddit, of people just going out their way to critique fan fiction in a way that makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable. Because unless the author explicitly tells you to, there's no reason to be criticizing an author and saying, oh, they have plot holes, or oh, they're doing this and that. Because you have to think they're writing 250,000 words for free just to for the love of Germany. And I don't think that people realize that sometimes when it comes to these Reddit forums. And I've noticed that sometimes people are saying, some authors are saying that, oh, people are being too nice with their reviews and they're not giving them criticism, not realizing that this is a fandom space, so people aren't going to feel comfortable with criticizing you. And I think unless there's explicit communication saying, hey, I want you to critique this book like you would a published work, there shouldn't be criticism when it comes to fan fiction. And on that note, when it comes to authors asking for criticisms of their fan fiction so they can hone in their craft, I think that's great for them because it helps them to understand what they need to improve on before they decide to be published or whatever their endeavor will be. I think that's great for them, but it does turn the fan fiction reader into kind of being their focus group. And I know some people like being in the know, but I feel as though sometimes it feels like people just want to know what'll be the hottest thing that's coming out, and then they can like be able to say, "Oh, I knew this published book before it was a published book," and I was like in the know before everyone else. And I think that's really, I don't know how I feel about that because technically you're not hurting anyone by having your readers be your focus group. It's just a very odd way for a fandom to be existing, if that makes sense. Because it's not being a fandom as so much as though this is basically NetGalley in a way, because we're just picking apart this fan fiction to see what works, what doesn't work. And I think that's great because it does give the author, how they hone their craft, how they can improve, how their writing needs to improve. I get that. But I think that it's might be detrimental to writers who aren't seeking out that level of criticism. And on to my next point when it comes to people wanting to use people as focus groups in that manner. I understand that their people who are their readers are going to be mostly their potential buyers for the book that they want to release. And that's great that they're thinking about building their platform and things like that. I just feel as though building your platform from a fandom can get a bit dicey because I think you don't want your book to be that closely linked with the fandom. And some people, they're able to be very successful. For instance, Alchemized, that was a huge book and it was like a bestseller. And I think that's great. But I think that other authors, especially ones that are maybe a little bit more obscure, I think that their focus should be on, you know, marketing the book as just the book itself and not, oh, this Hermione fanfiction, excuse me, was turned into a published book. So I get it that they want to build that, but I just feel as though it can be a bit much. And when it comes to publications, not publication, so sorry, I don't know I said that. When it comes to um publishers basically picking out fan fiction writers as their next big hits, I think that's great for the fan fiction writers. I just think that I don't know how they're going to vet this because at some point I could see it becoming a bit of a sticky situation because we're just turning every mainstream Germani fan fiction into published works. I'm sorry, published books. I don't know why I said published works, but published books. I think that could be a bit much because it'll be oversaturated. Because how many enemies to lovers books can we make at some point? Unless we're like picking out what is considered the best of the best. I just feel so it's eventually going to be oversaturated because I think maybe in even 18 months' time, I don't know if people are going to be super down with reading enemies to lovers because like out even if you take Germany out of the equation, there's a lot of enemies to lovers books and I think that people might want to see something other than enemies to lovers coming soon, even if it's just honestly any other trope because it's becoming very much like how people hated shadow daddies for a while because it was just oversaturated. But I don't know, if you like it I love it, but I just think that we might become a potentially too many enemies to lovers books because I know a lot of publishers are taking fan fictions and particularly Germani fan fictions and having them become published books. And another thing I've noticed when it comes to Germani fan fictions being turned into published books, it is very hard to do an honest book review of it because for me personally, I was trying to review Draco Malfoy in the Mortifying Ordeal of Being in Love. That published book turned into The Irresistible Urge to Fall for Your Enemy. That's the published name of that book. I tried my hardest to do a review of that book, but it made me feel so uncomfortable because it feels so, I don't know, disrespectful to hate that book because it feels like I was judging a fan fiction author. And it felt, I don't know, icky because I personally did not like that book at all. I don't know, it just felt very oddly paced in the writing style. I just didn't like it, even though I loved the fan fiction of the irresistible urge to fall for your enemy. I love the fan fiction, but the book, I just hated it so much. And also, that is a very wordy title, and I might have used those two things interchangeably. I'm sorry if I did. And when I was trying to do a book review of The Irresistible Urge to Fall for Your Enemy, what I realized I was doing was I didn't want to like bash it too much because her book was coming out during the same time of Rose in Chains, and I didn't want a bad review of her book to accidentally in some way affect Rose in Chains because I genuinely love that book, and a lot of people were just lumping them together, those two Hermione books, and I don't know, it just feels like it could be a bit unfair to not give real reviews because you're afraid of, oh, if I don't like this one particular Hermione book, someone's going to take it as all Hermione published books are Hermione fanfictions that have been turned into published books as bad, and I don't want to come across that way. It's just I didn't like how close those releases are because it felt like they were trying to make it into like when Barbie and Oppenheimer were coming out, those two movies, it felt like we were trying to do that type of vibe, and I did not appreciate that because I'm pretty sure they are from the same publishing house. It's just, it wasn't a fun time to review that book because it just felt like if you hated it, you were basically trying to be mean because you maybe you didn't like Hermione, but sometimes you just honestly just don't like a book. And the other thing that I do find very interesting about Germani books, Germani fan fictions becoming published books is that it's very much changing the way everyone's kind of interacting with Germani because it feels like people, if you're someone who just likes Germany in general, it feels like I know that they're trying to be an influencer sometimes, which I respect it because a lot of times it's like they're going to start off with Germany fan fictions and then they'll do booktube and then they'll, make a profit from that, which I have no problem with. It just seems like Germany is just being treated as a way to make an income, if that makes sense. But I do understand that during this economy, you have to do what you gotta do. Understand that. But it just feels like a lot. But I'm very curious to know what you guys think about Germani books being published as a Germani fanfictions being turned into books. And see you later. Bye. I'm sorry if this was rambly. It was my first time.